rhymes are fly, my beats are sick, my crew is big and it keeps getting bigger. That's 'cause Jesus Christ is my...
Praise the Lord, for goodness sake, we're all gonna take a Bible break. I said, praise the Lord, for goodness sake, we're all gonna take a Bible break. So when your fingers start to pop and your feet start to tap, you're listening to the righteous rap.
Those of you who stick around until the end of class will know that I end each lesson by taking requests for future topics. And those who read the comments will know that after my first lesson, I got a request to explain how the book of Revelation is actually about Nero. Now, obviously, this is a super hard request. I knew it would take a while to research and produce, and that it would slow my production of shorter lessons. But at long last, here it is. My format of addressing clear black and white questions of what's in the Bible doesn't lend itself to conclusively saying anything about Nero. But it does allow me, in the tradition of this series, to ask, what is the book of Revelation about, anyway? If you answered that it's a clear prediction of God returning in the not-too-distant future, you would be wrong. Now usually, when I do the buzzer and say you're wrong, I can point to a specific passage in the Bible that explains why. But in this case, it doesn't work that way. This lesson will be a little different, in that we'll need to take a broader look across Revelation to cover our topic. If you start right into the book without any preconceptions, you'll find very little to indicate that it's a prediction of Jesus, at least as we conceive him, returning to judge modern-day or near-future Earth. And if you don't believe me, let's take a look at what happens in the first few chapters. It opens with John saying that he's addressing the book to 7 contemporary churches in Asia Minor at the time of the Roman Empire. Each church gets a short message, before John starts to describe being taken up to a throne, upon which sits someone who looks like ruby and jasper, and around him are 24 unidentified elders, 4 animals covered in eyes for some reason, and 7 lamps that represent 7 spirits of God. Everybody worships the guy on the throne and identifies him as their Lord and God. The focus then shifts to the fact that the character on the throne is holding a scroll, but nobody, apparently including the guy on the throne, can open it. Curiously, John cries because of this. But then a 7-horned, 7-eyed lamb who looked as if it had been slain, and I'm curious about how to picture this, took the scroll. Because the lamb had been slain, it was worthy to open the scroll. The lamb proceeds to open seals on the scroll, and every time he does, either a different colored horse comes out, or some other weird, usually apocalyptic thing happens. Then 4 angels stand at the 4 corners of the earth to stop all the wind. Because the earth apparently has corners in this narrative, and those corners are a good place to block all the wind from. And they put marks on 12,000 representatives from each tribe of Israel. They repeat the plagues thing again, this time with 7 trumpets instead of 7 seals, and on it goes. Believe it or not, that's the first 7 books of Revelation, and if I were to take the time to sum up the rest of the book, it wouldn't get any better. Now pause and think about what you just heard. Do you see any reason to believe that this is part of an accurate prediction of God returning to earth thousands of years after Jesus' death? I would say no. When you line up the facts and look at them with an open mind, it becomes obvious there's almost no clearly expressed meaning whatsoever here. Christians kind of know this. In fact, the book's random fever dream narrative is one of the things that they find so tantalizingly spooky about it. Most are pretty honest about the fact that they struggle to make sense of Revelation, relying on pastors and authors to explain how it tells us anything about current and near-future world events. But if Revelation sounds random and weird to you, I would suggest that that's just because the book is random and weird, and not because it contains deep mysteries you just don't know how to unlock. I would further suggest that we'll come to our clearest reading of Revelation if we quit striving to look between the lines for signs of profound prophecies, and instead try to understand the factors that drove its authors to write something so weird. I would identify 3 such factors. Now this will be an imperfect and incomplete layman's explanation, so feel free to share any additions or corrections in the comments. First, Revelation reads like a work of fan fiction based on old Hebrew prophecies. It's hard to properly convey this in a summary, but if you ever get a chance to read Old Testament prophets, you'll get a very clear picture of where the form and flavor of Revelation come from. Basically, it sounds like the church looked back at Israel's rage-fueled revenge prophecies against Babylon and decided they could also do the same thing about their Roman enemies. This is where deconverted men and others have good reason to theorize that Revelation was about Nero. Second, Revelation relies on vague, Nostradamus-style statements that might have a mystical ring to them, but really aren't predicting anything. Take Revelation 17:10-11, for example. They, referring to the heads of a beast, are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. This might sound spooky if you're in the right mood, and profound if you're a little credulous, but it doesn't inform you of anything. Rather, it probably reminds you of pointless fortune-teller nonsense, because that's all it is. Surrounding context does nothing to assist that passage, and Revelation is full of empty smoke and mirror riddles like this one. Finally, Revelation sounds weird largely because it's full of pre-orthodox Christian imagery. Without getting into too much detail, it helps to understand that our modern orthodox form of Christianity did not exist in the earliest church. Even basics such as God being an all-powerful spirit, Jesus being equally God and man, and Jesus' death serving to cleanse us of sins, were shaped by debates among Christians and have continued to be refined over the centuries. Before those debates were settled, the church believed what to our ears were unusual and downright bizarre-sounding things, including about Jesus himself, to the point that a modern Christian would be appalled to go back in time and hear the now pagan-sounding teachings that circulated in most of the early church. Revelation serves as a repository for many of these ideas, and much imagery Christians struggle with is probably not symbolic as much as old heresies that have fallen by the wayside. For example, does any modern Christian believe in, or have any comprehension of what is meant by, the 7 spirits of God referred to in Revelation 10? Few churches teach anything like this today, probably because whatever concept of God it represents did not survive into modern orthodoxy. Taking these 3 ideas into account may change the way you view Revelation, compelling you to ask questions such as, if Jesus was always God, why does Revelation 5:9 say the Lamb was only worthy to open the scroll because it had been slain? Was it not worthy, and possibly not entirely divine, before that? If early Christians all believed Jesus had been born on earth, then why does Revelation 12:5 hint that he had been born under strange circumstances in heaven, only to be chased to earth by a dragon? Or if this isn't about Jesus, then why did God make this passage so symbolic that it basically says nothing at all? If Revelation is about God coming back to judge people for their sins, and not a simple revenge narrative, then why so vividly describe so much gratuitous violence on all God's enemies? Why does Revelation 6:10 portray dead saints asking for their blood to be avenged? And what's the point of inflicting so many complicated forms of earthly pain and suffering on people who are going to hell anyway? If God is all-powerful and can do anything at will, then why are there so many battles? Why does the Archangel Michael have to fight against the dragon in Revelation 12? Is there any use for an angel engaging in combat on God's behalf when God could just settle the matter with the blink of an eye? And why does Jesus have an army with him in Revelation 19? Seriously, what use does an all-powerful deity have for an army? And on a side note, why the does Jesus have a sword coming out of his mouth? If this is meant to represent modern times, and not the resurgence of an ancient occupied Hebrew nation, then why does Revelation 7 focus on choosing people and categorizing them based on the outdated tribes of Israel? And what's the point of pausing to let them rule on an earth that's just going to get destroyed so that everybody can go to heaven anyway? And possibly most confounding of all, why does the devil get released after the 1,000-year reign? For real, what the hell is the point? This, along with so many other aspects of the story, portray nothing like an all-powerful God attempting to execute an even moderately intelligent plan, but instead reads like a messy series of apocalyptic events strung together by an author trying to be sensational and graphic for the sake of effect. Revelation is a hot mess of nonsense. It predicts nothing and informs people of nothing because it means nothing. Yet in spite of its vagueness, its violence, and its heresies, this book has a perverse appeal for too many Christians. They like to take its vague revenge imagery, probably focused on Rome, and assign it to whatever world leader or vague notion of one world government they currently fear or see coming over the horizon. and by virtue of its vagueness, this weird, disorganized collection of creepy images can serve this purpose for Christians of any period in history. It does so by indulging their worst impulses, feeding their feeling that the world is against them, that everyone is or soon will be persecuting them, and then assuring them that all those people out there will soon get their comeuppance, usually in gruesome, painful fashion. Worst of all, this narrative's core insinuation is that the world is divided into us and them, us described as pure and long-suffering, and them represented as universally monstrous and deviant. It's a horrid and dangerous worldview that is unfortunately at the root of the very idea of religion, and it's for that reason, perhaps more than any other, that Christians seem to love Revelation so much. Thank you for sticking with us through this unusually long Bible lesson with Prophet of Zod. Please join us next time when we discuss the time Jesus threw a temper tantrum because he was hungry. And as always, if you have any other ideas for Bible lessons, please let me know in the comments section below.
I learned my lesson, now I take time out each day.